Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And good morning from the place where everything is good. It's the good place. Yeah. Welcome, Kim.
Kim, how are you?
Yes.
I almost didn't make it. I had to run popsicles to school today for a popsicle party.
Wow, that's pretty wild. Well, I always lose out to the popsicles. And now she does sound hotter than I do, Tony. We had a big conversation about levels on this show.
Everything I hear
sounds okay to you. That's what I always hear. Oh, everything sounds fine. Okay, great. Then I get 3 emails. I'll read you one of 40 emails I get about this crap.
They're all lies. Lies.
It's so funny. I mean, it was
Who are you
just
going to trust, them or me? Come on.
Yeah, right, exactly. Or your lying ears. Anyway, it's great to have everybody here. What a day. I mean, we've got a lot of news. We are a news-centric show, if you've never been here before. We took our radio show from Grigio Radio in San Francisco, a legendary station, and we moved it to YouTube. So that's where Kim comes from. Tony is a refugee. This is a side hustle for him. He has about 1,500 jobs. He built KFI Radio, and he also built the Stephanie Miller Show, and he built the studio at the Angels work from.
Here and there, I keep myself busy.
Yeah. So we're lucky to have him here. And Albert is here on alternate days, and he comes from KGO. So we've also grabbed a couple of the regular experts that we love from our days at KGO, one of whom is one of the great guests in all of radio. And I'm not exaggerating. I used to say this guy was the best guest on KGO, and I include everybody. I mean, that doesn't mean that there weren't other great ones. There were tons of great ones. But to me, David Katz, his legal analysis and his summary and breakdown of so many complex legal issues is second to none. He joins us in the 11 o'clock hour. And I will also mention that we call him, is it Katzadamus that we call him?
Yes, I believe so.
Katzadamus is the name we give him because his predictions, legal predictions regarding Trump, regarding the Supreme Court, regarding any number of things, are so spot on. So he joins us in the 11 o'clock hour. Also, Belinda Waymouth. We do a segment on Thursdays called It's the Planet, Stupid. We will give you news of the planet. I don't need to tell you what's happening in the Northeast and over much of the Ohio Valley, and even all down to the Mid-Atlantic states. They're getting all of this smoke from Canada. Tony, you have that front page of the New York Post? This is what the New York Post ran, and it's a reflection of how New Yorkers are being choked off by this stuff, and they're, in typical fashion, the New York Post is pointing the finger. They point the finger to Canada. They say, Canuck wildfires plunge NYC into eerie, smoky hell.
That's
Blame Canada.
Pretty creative. Isn't there a song? Blame Canada. Yeah. Blame Canada.
Yeah, South Park.
Yeah, that's right. South Park. That's
That's
brilliant.
great.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the real thing to blame is the climate crisis and changes in the planet. You know, it is, but yeah, sure, this particular problem is coming as a result of wildfires in Canada. That said, those wildfires are the result of that other thing I'm talking about. So we'll get into that a little bit more with Belinda when she gets here. Big Supreme Court surprise case just handed down. So we'll do law and disorder in a moment. Tony, if you could ready the elements of law and disorder. We love our production elements, so thank you for those. I also will tell you that I have I don't want to call it a quiz, but a question for you. I'm almost tempted to ask the question now.
Please.
Yeah, it's related to California.
A poll?
It's let me get it here, and I hadn't planned to do it right off the hop. But you know what? I think I will do it right off the hop. So,
Wild idea, but it just might work.
It just might work.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
I was going to read you a couple of negative emails I got about levels, and I've got, but let's put that to the side. Smash the like button like a boss, if you would, please.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod. And now, let me ask you a question that I think you can easily answer, or at least easily take a guess at. In California, what percentage of the housing in the state of California is renters? What percentage of people who live in California rent? I am taking guesses in the chat. Aloha, Walter. Aloha, Lynn. Aloha, all of our chatters. What percentage of renters is there in California? 40% says Vicky, 50% says Randy, SF Tesla 42%, Joseph says 65, Slayton says 49, 50. Like half the people in the state rent. The answer is 78, says Knit One Pearl One. 73, says Peace. Renters occupy 45% of the state of California. I mean, it's a sign that it's expensive to live here, right? Expensive to buy, I mean, in addition to being expensive to rent. Buying a home is simply out of the question for many Californians. The situation across the Golden State, not a good one. It's about the same, that 45.5% is what it actually is, as it was the last few years. Hasn't changed much. California was second only to one other state in the percentage of renters. What is the other state? One other state has more renters, a higher percentage of renters than does California. Yeah. Karen D has it. New York is right. Exactly. Not a tough one. I mean, New York is just very expensive. Nationwide, by the way, I'll just give you the 49%. Okay, so 49.7%, 50% of the housing units are renter occupied. Nationwide, yeah, a lot of people got it right, New York. Nationwide, it's just interesting, the rate of renter-occupied housing units is at its highest point since 1970. In other words, it's gotten harder to afford a house and to buy a house than at any point since 1970. 36.9% of the people nationwide rent. The growth of renter-occupied units continues to outpace the growth of owner-occupied units. This is all according to the Census Bureau data. So that's a quote from the Census Bureau, actually. The states with the lowest renter rate, the highest owner-occupied rate. Should we guess at that? States with the lowest renter rate. More people own homes in these states. I'll give you credit and points if you get any of them. The states with the highest owner-occupied rates, the lowest renter rates is the way to put it, because we're talking about renters. Alaska, says Sue. Wyoming, says Huge in Japan. Indiana, says Nancy M. Iowa, my state, LOL, says Jennifer. Christopher says Ohio. Louis says Michigan. Texas says Ryder. The lowest renter rate. In other words, the highest owner-occupied rate. The most people own homes in these states, more than they rent. The answer, West Virginia at 27.4%. Maine at 28.9%. They have the highest owner-occupied rate. So if you're in West Virginia and Maine, it is more likely that you own your domicile, which would be a ding word, than it is that you rent it. So as the demography is a ding word too. As the demography of the U.S. changes, these are things that I think are interesting. And when you live in California, the ability to own a house is increasingly out of reach. I mean, just a fact. It's why people leave this state. Now, I'd also say that there's some virtues in renting, to be perfectly honest. If you get a good landlord, sometimes I think I'd rather be renting than own. But if you have a lousy landlord or even a mediocre landlord, you say, yeah, the plumbing's been leaking for months, they haven't fixed that wall, blah, 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 blah. Complain to the landlord about noise at night. They don't do anything, that whole thing. You can get noise at night, though, when you own the place. I mean, there are a lot of things that I think, anyway, more to the point, it's about affordability and higher mortgage rates and inflation cutting into household income. So your ability to own a house is just increasingly out of reach. If you go to L.A., San Francisco, I mean, it's a tough reach. So I saw that and I thought it was worth noting. Now, I will get to in a moment Law and Disorder, but there was a notable passing.
The Mark Thompson Show.
A notable passing, Pat Robertson has passed away, everyone. He was I would call him the breakthrough evangelist who brought religion into politics in an extremely aggressive way. The Jerry Falwells and Pat Robertsons of the world changed the arithmetic on the way religion was able to craft political policy. A religious broadcaster who turned a tiny station in Virginia into the global Christian broadcasting network.
He was the one during the AIDS crisis who said that blamed gays and said they were going to hell or something.
That's right.
He was a real nice guy, that one.
He blamed gays for the AIDS crisis and for hurricanes, everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You blame gays for hurricanes?
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
Yeah, it was the typical stuff. I've talked to the Lord, and let me tell you, he says that they're sinners, and that's why they're being punished. And we're all being punished because of them. But what he did with that, was it the 700 Club? Is that what it was called?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. He took that 700 Club and made it it looked like Good Morning America. I mean, he brought like real production value to it, and that became the pulpit from which he was able to spew this hateful stuff. He also was something of a political analyst, and he marshaled a lot of those religious believers into political activists. The Republican Party began to connect with Pat Robertson, meaning talk to Pat Robertson, and he talked to them because he was able to get a lot of people to show up. We talk about the Supreme Court and how it's informed increasingly by extreme religious belief. We talk about legislatures nationwide, how they're increasingly informed by extreme religious belief. I call it the mullification of America. We talk about those mullahs in Iran. How could anybody let these crazy mullahs run things? Well, we're being mullified here. It's just that our mullahs are Christian mullahs. And I have nothing against Christianity or religion. But what's happened, and Pat Robertson really is the tip of the spear in terms of turning extreme religious belief into political activism. Pat Robertson is emblematic of that. And emblematic is a ding word. More than a half a century, Robertson was a familiar presence in American living rooms, known for, here it is, the 700 Club. In later years, his televised pronouncements of God's judgment, blaming natural disasters on everything from homosexuality to the teaching of evolution. The money poured in as he solicited donations. His influence soared, and he brought a huge following with him when he moved directly into politics by seeking the GOP presidential nomination in 1988. Robertson pioneered the now common strategy of courting Iowa's network of evangelical Christian churches and finished in second place in the Iowa caucuses ahead of Vice President George Bush. His masterstroke was insisting that 3 million followers across the U.S. sign petitions before he would decide to run. The tactics gave him an army, right? You know who those people are, where they are. He asked people to pledge that they'd work for him, pray for him, and give him money. Political historians may view it as one of the most ingenious things a candidate ever did. So he's more than just a preacher who did a TV show and caught fire. This is what I was talking about. He redirected religion as political activism. He later endorsed Bush in that campaign. And now, pursuit of Iowa's evangelicals is a ritual for Republican hopefuls. In fact, it's very much a part of the conversation now. It's where Mike Pence and the rest of these guys are showing up, right? Iowa. It's a place to get a push, a platform. Elise says, sayonara, sucker.
Sayonara, sucker.
Yeah, well, there you go. Robertson helped cement the alliance between conservative Christians and the Republican Party, they say. He was born in Lexington, Virginia, and he turned his life into a life of tremendous activism and extreme religious belief and interpretation, right? He went to Yale, got a law degree from Yale. Did you know that, Kim? I didn't know that.
No, because he seemed like such a dummy.
He failed the bar exam, but a lot of people
no
do.
offense. Oh,
yeah.
okay.
But a lot of people fail the bar exam. I think they usually go back and take it multiple times, depending on the state. Sometimes certain states, California has a tough bar exam, for example. New York's got a tough bar exam. But
Did he retake it?
He chose not to pursue a law career. Yeah, how about that?
He decided to be a grifter, right? And
yeah, right. Well, grifting is
siphon
easier.
Social security checks away from little old ladies.
I've decided I'm not going to go into law. It was my mistake.
My bad. I'm sorry.
All right. He got a master's in divinity from New York Theological Seminary. Then he drove south with his family to buy a bankrupt UHF television station. He said that he had just $70 in his pocket, but soon found investors. And who knows if that's the origin story is even real, but that's what he said. They went on the air in 1961, October. CBN, Christian Broadcasting Network, established as a tax-exempt religious nonprofit. Hundreds of millions of dollars brought into the CBN. They disclosed $321 million in ministry support. That was just in 2022. Hundreds of millions of tax-free dollars. And then you're told how to vote. This is happening in plain sight at CBN on this Pat Robertson network, but it's also happening in churches and synagogues across the country. These divinely connected people, however you view them, priests, preachers, rabbis, whomever they are, they're viewed with great respect. And oftentimes they are marshaling their congregation to vote in a certain way. And yet they have tax-exempt status. It is it's one of the galling things about this country.
He had this way of coming off as like this sweet little old man, oh, it's so hello, and then the vitriol that would come spewing out of his face. Horrible.
Well,
The world's a better
Kim,
place.
you make a really good point. I mean, this is very important. His style was intoxicating. He was a very warm presence. He was a smart guy. He was well educated. He had all of these different guests on. He was sophisticated, might be the word. And as a result of both that style and that sophistication, there was a credibility and a legitimacy to him. And so you could watch and feel as though you were really getting information. And the vitriol that you talk about, and vitriol is a ding word, was wrapped in that style. It wasn't fire-breathing dragon vitriol. It was accusatory vitriol that was in a chocolatey shell, that it went down easy. And so he could make these outrageous statements about the gay community or about whatever else, sinning. Anyway, he had Jimmy Carter was on, Donald Trump went on there. I mean, he had big people through there because he was a political force. Well, he also, by the way, after 9/11, said that the attacks were caused by God, angered by the federal courts, pornography, abortion rights, and church-state separation. That's why 9/11 happened. That's what he said. Talking again about 9/11 on his TV show a year after 9/11, he described Islam as a violent religion that wants to dominate and destroy. That prompted President George Bush to distance himself from Robertson, and I have to say that Islam is a peaceful and respectful religion. He called for the assassination of Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. Later apologized for that. He warned residents of rural Pennsylvania not to be surprised if disaster struck them because they voted out school board members who favored teaching intelligent design instead of evolution. And I mentioned this before, in 1998, he said Orlando should beware of hurricanes because they allowed the Gay Days event down there.
That's his face he made when he started blaming people for the world's ills.
I think he's blaming people for the world's ills right out of the chute. Yeah. He said that towels in Kenya could transmit AIDS. He warned Kenyans about the fact that you're going to get AIDS from towels. CBN issued a correction saying Robertson misspoke about the possibility of getting AIDS through towels. So
I misspoke.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, you see how this guy took this platform and this network and he made it transformative from the standpoint of politics, American politics. And he did it all tax-free because God was mentioned in that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash the like button. I mention it from time to time. I guess you need to do that. It helps us in the YouTube analytics.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Give us a thumbs up if you could, please. Thank you for that.
I do have an update.
All right.
On, last night was 8th grade graduation, and my daughter had been tapped to sing the national anthem.
Oh.
And
I didn't know they did the national anthem at the graduation, but that's fine. Okay.
One thing I said is, please don't embarrass me by forgetting the words.
That's the worst thing you can say.
What do you think happened?
Why do you say that? Why do you say, you know what? I'm going to talk to the state and have this child taken away from you.
I told her, just print out the words so that you have them in front of you.
Well, by the way, that's a good thing to tell her.
Yeah.
But saying whatever you do, don't do this is like the worst thing. Oh.
Well, I said I used that as a catalyst to print out the words and have them there so there would be no stress over
you and I don't have children, okay? But Tony, wouldn't you say we'd be better parents than Kim?
Thanks, Tony. Oh no, I would totally be doing that to my kid. Are you kidding me?
Oh, all right. You and Tony should not. Anyway, go ahead.
Remember that one time you forgot?
Oh my God. Well, it's good then that you don't have them.
I have it on my phone now because guess what happened?
Oh my God.
Yeah. But then everyone started singing with her, and it was fine. But
Of course, they lift her up.
they did lift her up. It was a good moment. Yeah.
Oh, man, there's so much pressure already, Kim. Why don't you say something like, hey, look, don't feel pressure. Go out there, do your best. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
And it's good that I don't have kids because I go, look.
High note, I'll say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Well, you hit the high note.
I said you wrapped it up in spectacular fashion. The high note was amazing.
You really stuck the landing, but
really did.
Before that, it was kind of
happened at the beginning.
I think there's a hint of desperation. I really do.
Yeah. It was not that good, Simon.
If I'm being honest with you, it was horrible.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I thought
a bit pub singerish, I thought.
No, don't say that about it. She's terrific. Wow. Very, very good of you, though, to volunteer that, Kim, because there's a lot to make fun of there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What other bad parenting skills could you share with us that you have?
Oh, I think I have quite a few. Yeah.
It is one of the worst I've ever heard.
Okay, there's no need to rub it in.
They're carried down from generation to generation. You know how it is.
No, it's true. We all have excuses for why we do these things that we do to our kids, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, my mom did this to me. You don't know. You're getting off easy. All right, so Tony, tell me, you're producing today, although, you know.
That's questionable, but go on.
What should I do? Do you want me to? There was a pretty big Supreme Court decision. I will put it off. The Trump stuff, just to be clear, the Target letter that he got of indictment, all that sort of thing, I'm putting that off, obviously, till David Katz shows up in the 11 o'clock hour. And, but there was a major Supreme Court decision that just came down. Kind of a surprise. It got a little law and disorder. Can I do it before Kim's news? What do you think I should do, Tony?
Thanks, Tony. That's what we already advertised. Either we do it before or after Kim's news. So I guess is your and we have 10:30 is So
we have Jefferson Graham coming up at 10:45.
Okay, well then
if
we do this fast. Yeah, let's do this.
These times are rough approximations. Yes, this is Pacific time, everyone. I told you I did that podcast the other day, and they gave me all the times in Greenwich Mean Time because they're European people participating. Mm-hmm. I started thinking maybe we should do everything in GMT.
No, that's too confusing. I can't do the math.
Okay.
You can't even get between East Coast and West Coast time.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
We should do everything in the 24-hour clock too, just to really throw people off.
All right, so I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's do some law and disorder when we come back after Kim's news. Let's run on time for a change around here. And then I will give you some law and disorder, big Supreme Court decision. And as I mentioned, we'll put the Trump stuff off, along with sort of an expanded discussion of the Supreme Court. When David Katz arrives, we'll do that. And next hour, of course, Belinda Waymouth. It's the Planet Stupid Jefferson Graham Tech Thursday. Much to do. Smash the like button. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. You know, a lot of people talking about the smoke from all the wildfires in Canada today. It continues, and now a Senate panel is holding a hearing on the escalating number of wildfires as the East Coast is blanketed in smoke. The director of the Interior Department's Office of Wildland Fire, Jeff Rupert, told lawmakers climate change continues to play an oversized role in the growing intensity of wildfires in recent years. Republican Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming argued forests need to be properly managed to make them more resilient to fires. The smoke from fires burning in Quebec clouded Washington, D.C., and much of the Northeast again today. And also, the FAA continues delaying flights into the New York area due to continuing bad air quality, and that includes flights into New York City and Newark, New Jersey as well. I don't remember a Senate panel holding a hearings about the California wildfire smoke, but
yeah, it's true.
Okay.
It's a very geographic specific. She's so right about that. I mean, Kim is so right about this. This is, and you're right about something else. I thought of you yesterday because Courtney actually said to me, "Wow, look at all these New Yorkers. They're so bent out of shape. We have this all the time. You don't hear about this. You don't hear what we talked about it. You wake up in the Bay Area or many parts of California, you have ash on your car. It's smoky. It's awful. I'm not to say it's acceptable, but that just it is the way life is. And now they have it, and they're literally,
freaking
convening.
out.
Right. Exactly. I mean, and freaking out well beyond what they do for us. Yeah.
Well,
But,
yeah.
and also and honestly, these are the effects of the climate crisis. There's no question about it. That doesn't, so great. Okay, now what? We know that's what it is, but
It's just so interesting how it happens in California. We handle our business. We check the little purple air quality dot. We see how bad it is. Do we go outside today? Do we flip on the air purifier if we have one? Do we have to wear the KN95 if we're going out for, to the store or whatever? Is it a day that you use the treadmill instead of walking around the neighborhood? Whatever. We figured it out. We know that there's going to be wildfire season, and we, act accordingly. And I get that the first time it happens, it's a big deal, and that you have to learn how, you're ease into this, you have to learn how, but it just seems like now it's the East Coast, and now we get the Senate hearings, and now everyone cares, but no one really cared about us.
well, maybe that's what has to happen. The East Coast has to be affected.
I'm offended.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. It's not cool.
No, it isn't, Mark. No, it isn't. Okay, so a San Diego-based company is filing lawsuits against Moderna and Pfizer over patent infringement related to the COVID-19 vaccines. Why? Well, the Union Tribune says Promosome is suing both companies, Moderna and Pfizer, for using that mRNA technology in the vaccines. The San Diego company says Nobel Prize winners Gerald Edelman and Vincent Morrow used the technology at the Scripps Research Institute in La Jolla. The lawsuits say Moderna and Pfizer used the technology without a license, and the company is looking for a share of the tens of billions of dollars in revenue from the pandemic. Put your hand out. Everybody wants a little piece of that pie.
Yeah. There many will tell you that the pandemic might have been one of the great money grabs in history. You know what I mean? It just in modern history. Yeah. Anyway,
This is really interesting. This is a team of Southern California researchers making this major milestone. It happened this week. For the first time ever, power was transmitted wirelessly through space and detected at a precise location on Earth. How did they do it?
What?
Yes. The solar power experiment's still in its early stages, but Caltech scientists hope someday they'll be able to, beam power to specific places like remote regions and places devastated by natural disasters or war. Officials tout Caltech's SSPP project as an example of modern private sector aerospace research at work. Caltech President Thomas Rosenbaum says the milestone foreshadows a remarkable payoff for humanity, a world powered by uninterruptible renewable energy.
wow, that really is. That's an exciting technology.
I mean, holy moly. Come on. That's
Holy
pretty
moly.
cool. How do
Exactly.
you shoot it up into space and it comes back down in a specific spot?
Yeah, I mean,
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
well, the truth is, I mean, the logical extension of it, I don't know that we're not going to see it, but I don't know that it'll ever be seen. But imagine with all this, PG&E and all of the issues with getting power from here to there and power grid issues. Imagine if it was wireless. I mean, imagine if you could just, as you say, beam it down to a specific place. Even if you could just reduce the complexities of the wiring, you might do yourself a favor societally and technologically.
Yeah, I mean, it has all kinds of applications that would be pretty cool, I think. I don't know.
Yeah,
All
I mean,
right.
it's very exciting.
Was that the plot of Goldeneye, the James Bond movie? Wasn't that the
Oh, is that
satellite?
right?
I think so. It was like, but they turned it into a weapon that could be like an energy beam instead, and I think that's how it started. If I remember
Mr.
right.
Bond, I intend to take over
Sorry.
the energy grid.
Yeah, well, movies come to life, apparently.
Hmm.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says more bank consolidation is possible in the U.S. In an interview with CNBC, Yellen said she wouldn't be surprised to see further consolidation among small banks in the banking sector as some continue to experience pressure on earnings. She added some banks may face challenges related to commercial real estate due to higher interest rates and remote work affecting demand for office space. You mentioned that yesterday, Mark, about how many buildings in San Francisco are vacant. Some landlords or owners just walking away.
Yeah.
Yellen's comments coming after several mid-sized banks failed and were seized and sold by federal regulators earlier this year. And lastly, a story about aliens. That's right. A family from Las Vegas claims they saw aliens in their backyard after something fell from the sky. On Wednesday, KLAS TV in Las Vegas
Thompson, party of four.
No, it was not me.
It released the 911 call audio from the morning of May 1st. The caller told the dispatcher there were two non-human beings up to 10 feet tall with large eyes staring at him from his backyard in the Northwest Valley.
Wow.
About 40 minutes after something streaked low across the sky.
Wow.
A bright
Joe
green
Box and
flash.
Little Anthony.
Maybe it was Joe Box and Little Anthony. Did they ever think about that?
They didn't.
Yeah.
Nope,
All
that
right.
never crossed their mind.
All right, so 10 foot, okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, 10 feet, big eyes, staring at them.
From the backyard. A bright green flash was seen across Nevada, Utah, and Eastern California right about that time. The flash was also recorded on a Las Vegas Metro police officer's body camera.
Oh, so there's actually evidence of it, at least of the
Nearby,
flash.
Nellis Air Force Base says it is not involved with whatever happened that night.
No.
That's it.
This is super intriguing, I think.
All
I don't
right.
know. I mean,
There's never been anything like this.
right. I think it sounds pretty cool.
10
It could
feet
also
tall
be
with large eyes.
Well, when you're 10 feet tall, you want the large eyes because they're offset by how tall you are. I mean, if you're short and you have these huge eyes, then the eyes really are pronounced. But if you're 10 feet tall and you have big eyes,
You have
then-
little eyes, you can't see all the way to the ground.
well, you never know if the eyes are just cosmetic or if they're actually used for sight. I mean, they are people from another planet or another place. I don't even know it's a planet, but this is very intriguing. I'm actually someone who'd like to hear more about I would have kept them on the line if I'd been the 911 operator.
Follow up on this story. Yeah. The eyes have it. This report is.
Have it. I get it.
Yeah, thank you. This report is crowdfunded, which means we rely on you to help support the show. You can find the Patreon and the PayPal links and so much more at themarkthompsonshow.com. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Everything is going extremely well.
I offer this sincere apology to you today.
My bad. I'm sorry.
I prefer the Walmart parking lots. I'd come from regular stock.
Receive the royal scepter. Receive the rod of equity and mercy. May the Spirit guide you in wisdom and grace.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
Come on, everybody. It's our big Thursday show. Guests galore. Jefferson Graham comes in with Tech Thursday in a few minutes. We've got David Katz, the brilliant former federal prosecutor, who joins us just after the top of the hour. If you're watching anywhere in the world, welcome. Smash the like button like a boss. Give us a thumbs up, and we will continue to try to put out a quality product as best we are able.
Smash it with your iron rod.
With your iron rod or whatever's handy, you can give us a thumbs up. We have Tony in the mix today.
Thanks, Tony.
And Kim, of course.
Kim, how are you?
And I will tell you that, Tony, are you ready with a little mini law and disorder? Okay. This, my friends, as we look at the law and some major decisions and machinations of the legal process is law and disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
Well, I'm going to lead with the Supreme Court decision, which is pretty big. They say, and remember, this is a conservative Supreme Court. I mean, there are a lot of, without doing a whole rundown on it, we've done it before, they're not necessarily inclined to make the sort of decision that they have made. They have ruled that Alabama discriminated against black voters. That's right. Essentially, this decision in drawing the congressional districts in Alabama last year discriminated against black voters, say the Supreme Court justices. It was a 5-4 decision. Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh joined the three liberal justices in this opinion. Where do you think Clarence Thomas was on this? The most corrupt judge. I think there are other corrupt judges on the court.
Did he side with the black people, Mark?
Well, he wrote his decision from a Walmart parking lot, but he did not side with the majority. In other words, he ruled with the Republicans and with the redistricting, the severe redistricting that did discriminate against black voters. So he was for the discriminating against black voters, if you want to put it in a more stark way. More on that when David Katz gets here. In the world of disorder and law, from Law and Disorder, I think it's interesting, Heather Knight's latest column in the San Francisco Chronicle, got to get her back. She used to be a regular visitor. The San Francisco cops faulted for the police response to a catalytic converter theft that was going on right there in front of them. So San Francisco residents expected the cops to arrest this dude who is jacking catalytic converters off a stolen car parked outside of this Richmond District apartment building. And when the cops got there, they found the thief, found out he was on probation for a previous theft, and let him walk away.
What?
That's right. One more example, she says, in a string of complaints by San Franciscans who witness crime or experience it themselves, call the police, and get nothing much beyond shrugs and excuses for why they can't arrest people. If you collect 100% of your paycheck, you should do 100% of your job, said one resident. Police Chief Bill Scott didn't take kindly to this criticism, released a statement and body camera footage from the incident after Heather's column ran. He said his officers were right to not make an arrest and to let the alleged converter cutter walk away. I support their decision, he said, because the facts as I know them confirm there was no probable cause.
Well, like the guy didn't have the catalytic converter in his hand?
Yeah.
Or any tools in his pocket or oil all over himself or anything?
There was a complaint filed with the city's Department of Police Accountability about their unsatisfied experience. Apparently saying the officers neglected their duty to properly investigate the crime and make an arrest. This is from Heather's column. The Department of Police Accountability, boy, that has to be a busy office in San Francisco. They assigned a team of 2 investigators and an attorney to look into the woman's claim. You know, these are the actually multiple women in that area. They're residents in the neighborhood. And they're saying, hey, we call the cops and nothing happens. They show up and they go, can't do anything. They said that the officers, should have made an arrest at the scene. But investigators say that the investigators they got an attorney, and as I say, this Department of Police Accountability, they side with the police chief. But they did agree that two unnamed officers engaged in, quote, improper conduct in investigating the crime. So it's a little unclear what that means. They didn't specify further. This is an ongoing thing. I'd love to have Heather on the air with us because I think she is someone who writes about this and can speak to this Department of Police accountability, and it's a big story in San Francisco. So, do I have time for one more? I don't see Jeff waiting. Did I send him a link? He should have a link. Oh. You want to check on that, Tony? Do you have it? You have Jefferson's email, do you not?
I'll
no?
check. Hold on.
Okay. I think it's interesting that Walgreens is being sued by ex-CEO of Walgreens for $200 million over a broken contract. Yeah. Claims that the company reneged on the deal with his new company. So essentially what's happening is, these are the highest levels, is, Walgreens deep pockets being sued by other deep pocket former CEO, Greg Wasson. He worked there for more than 3 decades, started as an intern, and then ended up being CEO. And now he's suing them. Yeah, that's good. For all of you kids who want to rise to the top, it can be done. And finally, let me share this with you. Tony, do you have the story that ran on Fox News? This is, I don't know, maybe some of you watch Fox News. This, is it Harris Faulkner? Is that her name? Do you know? Okay. She claimed something happened in a restaurant. She claimed that she was kicked out of a restaurant for praying. Okay. She called it a blistering biblical monologue. I'm sorry. It was called, what she said was called a blistering biblical monologue about the ongoing attack on the Christian faith in America. We actually have it for you here, so you'll be able to hear a little bit of it. But the essence of it is, she's in a restaurant, she's praying before the meal, and she claims because she was praying, she was thrown out of the restaurant. It's total crap, right? It didn't happen. It's a completely fictitious, invented story, okay? Here it is, though. This is to gin up more anger at the libs and at society and how they are turning on religion and how you're not allowed to openly practice religion. That was the idea behind this fiction, but it is completely made up. Go ahead, Tony. No. So the idea was that,
give me 1 second.
And the reason we don't know, the reason we know it's not true, is because she was asked further, well, where did this happen? This is outrageous. I mean, how can any kind of prayer before a meal be in any way something that would get you thrown out? You know what I mean? You can hold hands, you can say anything you want, Jesus, Allah, whatever your deal is.
In restaurants doing that, and you just kind of look at them and look away, and people are going to do what they're going to do, and fine.
Obviously BS, right? Yeah. So she claimed she'd been kicked out of a restaurant for praying. And in truth, when she was asked about it, she couldn't provide any details. And then they brought Fox News PR in to handle things, to provide the name of the restaurant and the date where it happened, and they couldn't. And they still haven't. Even Republicans, I don't know, because this has all become, Republicans versus Democrats, even they are saying it sounds like BS. Lies are not the tool of the Lord, said one of them. Well, can you run it, Tony? Do you have it or not?
Now we know that.
We know who we are, and we know whose we are. For those of us who believe, we must be bold in our faith right now. When you gather in public spaces, pray thankfully over your food. Even when the server gives you the stink eye or tells the manager that your peaceful grace is triggering them. Had it happen to me. I've been asked to leave a restaurant for openly bowing my head in prayer hands. In America. It's all good. They don't deserve my money anyway.
Well, I mean, it plays into a completely fictitious narrative. Completely fictitious. The religion thing is something that generally the liberal establishment has no problem with. It's legislating religion that the liberal establishment I'm talking about mainstream liberalism now, okay? Totally crazy. Anyway, I don't know what happened with Jefferson Graham. Did you reach him or not? I guess not, huh?
I sent him the link too, so I don't know.
Okay, so I don't know what happened.
I was going to say about this woman, if it were before all those Fox emails came out, then maybe you might give her the benefit of the doubt, perhaps. But now that we know that they're a cavalcade of liars, then when it looks like a lie, you got to jump to the most likely option here.
That's such a good point. That's such a good point. Yeah, history has shown that they completely invent things. And this is the and then they go to they default to this. This is a quote from her. It's as though people on the left have more free time than anybody else. She's talking about throwing her out. They want to acronym and pronoun us to death, she said. She said, apparently, and taking a swing at the LGBTQ community, quote, "Know this, the Lord has determined I am a woman and my pronouns are USA." I mean, I'm so sick of this my pronouns are thing. Oh, my God.
Are USA, baby.
My pronouns are USA. There you go.
Her pronouns are HATE. Her pronouns are ugly.
Right, you got it. That, my friends, is Law and Disorder for today. God, I really gave you a long "that's my friends," and it's still Law and Disorder. We have a lot of trouble hitting those cues, huh?
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Let's be careful out there.
I really thought I gave you some time on that, Tony. What happened on that? All right.
We're going to fix this. I'm going to redo a lot of the production here. Yeah.
All right. He joins us on Thursdays. We don't have a lot of time for him today. Of course, maybe he got the link late. I don't know. We're going to find out. But please welcome Jefferson Graham, everybody. You know him from all his work across YouTube, from photo walks. What's happening, man? We've got a solid 6 minutes for you.
All righty. My apologies. My head was down, and I was editing a video, and I went off into outer space. So I apologize to everybody.
Well, I will damn you with drop you hate.
There's never been anything like this.
Yes, there you go. So I had lunch. I had lunch with Jefferson Graham, and I shared this with the staff at a big staff meeting because he had some good thoughts, Jefferson Graham did, about things we should do. And he said, I would lose that Trump drop. Never been anything like it. It's old, and it's not funny.
Oh, it's not funny. No.
And when I told our Albert about this, Kim, what did Albert say? Kim.
I don't know. What did Albert say?
Tony, what did Albert say?
I don't know. I wasn't part of this conversation.
All right. I don't know.
Whoever is producing this thing has no idea what they're doing.
It's unbelievable. It's like everybody was just born today. This is their first day on the show. It's outrageous around here.
Why are you yelling?
We've got a history on this show, a rich history. It's like nobody knows it.
Why are you yelling?
So he said play it more, right?
Exactly. He said play it more. He said when Jefferson comes on, you should slam the crap out of him with that. With it.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're lucky that Albert isn't here, Jeff.
Smash
it's blasphemous.
Smash it. Yeah. Let's just go. How about some? Show the love. Give Trump some other clips. He said other wacko things too.
All right.
I think I'm the most honest human being, perhaps, that God ever created.
That's not as versatile a clip as "There's Never Been Anything Like It." But I'm going to spare you hearing it again.
Speaking of "There's Never Been Anything Like It," this week Apple introduced the Vision Pro, a $3,500 high-tech ski goggle that will be out in the second quarter of 2024 that a lot of people got very excited about. But $3,500 is a lot of money. They say that you've never seen anything like it, that watching photos
There's never been anything like this.
Right? Yeah.
This world that watching videos, that watching a movie is wonderful. I don't see Kim sitting in the living room with her kids and everybody having this headset on their head. That's my biggest problem. It makes us more isolated. It does not bring us together. I don't doubt that they're going to sell a lot of them because Apple could come out with what they say is the latest, greatest, state-of-the-art technology. Yeah, never seen anything like it. And
there you go.
People
There's never been anything like this.
No, but you say, by the way, he's clicking a lot, Tony. What is that? Is that like a kind of, he's just got a corrupt line or something?
Probably. If he leaves and comes back, it might fix it, but we're already,
You're already way late. But when you say it's a ski goggle, you just mean it looks like a ski goggle, obviously.
Like a ski goggle. It's a virtual reality headset. Yeah.
Now, it kind of looks like the Oculus thing that I have, to be honest. It doesn't look bigger, but you're saying there's more technology built into it. Why is it $3,600?
I didn't know that Mark had the Oculus. Look at
I have two Oculuses, actually. One has never been used.
Uh-huh.
If you want it, you can have it.
No, thank you. But when I tried the Oculus, I thought it was incredible. I just didn't see myself using it more than 3 or 4 times.
I wish I'd talked to you before I got mine.
This is basically a replica of the of your Mac, and it shows the Mac screen, and it shows the apps in front of you, and you can move your fingers to move things around, and you could move your eyes, and there's all sorts of gestures in there. I'm told that it costs Apple about $2,600 just to make the thing, with all the chips and everything that's in there. Yeah.
Wow.
We've never seen anything like it before.
Wow. Well, it does seem as though it's revolutionary, but the price point is high, right?
The price point is really high, but I don't think that's a problem. I think there's many, many people who will buy it as somebody who experienced the folks who used to camp out in tents the night before the iPhone came out. Do you remember those days?
Yeah, that's right. I forgot. Yeah, that's right. And Apple's used to people lining up for their stuff regardless of cost.
Yeah, I don't see that as being a problem. I just don't see it being a mass item. Obviously, I don't think Apple sees it as being a mass item either. Apparently, it will eventually become to resemble glasses. When that happens, then it could become a mass market item. I don't want to have computing going in front of my eyes all the time. But it's a really cumbersome thing. I mean, you're right. You're not going to take that out. That's why the ski goggles parallel is a good one. Yeah. I mean, Google had the glasses, and they looked like regular glasses, and they didn't catch on, right? They did not catch on, and they got a lot of brickbats. People didn't appreciate folks walking down the street taking pictures of them with their glasses. I also found the vision thing was really rough. I could barely see the images that Google was showing to me, and I could barely hear anything. Now, this is a different closed experience, and from what I've seen of looking at photos and watching a movie, looks incredible. Absolutely incredible.
You've just given me the first legit reason to get it. It has to be an immersive experience to watch the movie, that way. Yeah, I mean, if you have audio, right? Yeah,
like going to an IMAX movie in 3D, right?
Did you just get an alert on your computer? Just then I heard an alert in the background. Did you get one?
You heard a text message from a man named Doc who lives in Hawaii. I forgot to turn off.
If you had set the alert for our appearance, we would have more time right now, wouldn't you? It was really.
I learned a big important lesson today is to always set the alert for Mark on Thursday. And my apologies to Mark and all the listeners.
My bad. I'm sorry.
Okay. Jeff, we love you.
It's never happened before after all these months.
That's true.
There's never been anything like this.
That's true. There's never been anything like this. Actually, you usually you run on time. You run on time, you show up on time, and you have good information. Today at 2:00, you can find Jefferson Graham it says live at 2 today in your little thing.
I know, and when I typed it in, I erased it, but it went in anyway. I'm not live at 2 today. But if anybody wants to chat to me, just send me a note. I'll be happy to talk to you.
Odd visit, because a lot is not necessarily working the way it normally does. Jefferson Graham is at jeffersongraham.substack.com. Also, Photo Walks TV, the YouTube series. I love it. There are at minimum 2 things going on. Magnificent photography, great trips. I mean, great, if you will, journeys to different places, both in California, outside of California, in the U.S., outside of the U.S., and tips on how to get great pictures with just your iPhone or your analog device, or your, what do they call that? The
Android.
Google device.
Android.
That's the word. I knew it was an A word. Jeff, we love you, and next time, more time. Thank you so much. Okay, my friend. See you. Jefferson Graham, everybody. Yeah, come on now. Come on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I thought for certain it was something we did. I thought for certain it must have been something that we did, but it wasn't. Tomorrow, Kim is here without me.
Oh, man.
I'm concerned, I'll be honest with you. I'm not concerned about you. I'm concerned that all this stuff just seems to be, I don't know what's going on.
Well,
but tomorrow, Friday, is Friday Fabulous Florida. You've got Avila and Shore. There's so much to talk about.
It's good.
And you've got a crowded GOP field. They'll have a lot on the politics of it. They'll also, the emerging indictment, it would appear, the imminent indictment of the former president. So you're going to have a lot to talk about. And then, of course, Michael Snyder. I think it's going to be, that'll be an easy show. Then next week, you're going to rock it by yourself. So that's going to be fun, too.
Yeah.
But I just hope, it's one thing for me to have issues, but I don't want you to have issues. You know what I mean?
Right. That's kind.
Like, when you're house sitting, I don't want, the house to have all of these problems. There's a plumbing issue, and oh my God,
right.
The dog ran away, and you don't want that.
No.
So we've tried to make the bed for you so you can sleep in it without any issue. In the next hour, we have David Katz, who will join us, and we have Belinda Waymouth, who will join us. Good stuff still ahead. And let me just say this. If they don't join, if they forget, they don't, I've got plenty of cool, juicy stuff that I can get to.
No?
I will ridicule them mildly, I think, but after that, did you feel I was too tough on Jefferson Graham?
Actually, I thought you could have hit that drop a few more times.
There's never been anything like this.
How could you not like that drop? That drop is so versatile.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
He doesn't he doesn't get it. He just I should have hit him with that.
You just don't get it, do you?
You don't get it.
You don't.
Yeah. Not since the whoopee drop.
Did you really just do that?
I mean, that is a versatile drop as well. Anyway, Jeff will be back, hopefully on time, if he sets his alarm the right way. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored to you by the fine people at Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore. We love them, and we'll tell you more about them in just a moment. But first, let's go back to the smoky skies on the East Coast, because now it looks like the forecasters are saying this wildfire smoke blanketing the Northeast might start to lift by the end of the day. So call off the Senate hearings. You're going to be okay. Air quality alerts have been posted across the region. This is because of smoke from Canadian wildfires creating hazardous breathing conditions. The air quality concerns caused Major League Baseball to postpone today's game between the Nationals and the Diamondbacks in Washington, D.C. Cities in New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut could see some improvement in air quality by tonight, or in some places by this afternoon. They had this big horse race, the Belmont Stakes, I think.
Oh, right.
And they were wondering whether or not to cancel that as well. So we'll
right. Well, I know they don't care about the horses, but they care about
don't.
the people coming out to see the horses.
Yeah, you can't put a KN95 on a horse, I guess. I don't know. So here is this fellow, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and he is now in Washington, D.C. for his very first official visit since taking office late last year. President Biden hosting Sunak for an official working visit at the White House. The two leaders are expected to discuss a range of global issues, including the war in Ukraine, energy security, and climate change as well. And this not so fine fellow, Joran Vandersloot, is now in FBI custody. He is the man suspected in the 2005 disappearance of Natalie Holloway. Joran Vandersloot is en route from Peru to Alabama, where he faces fraud and extortion charges related to Holloway's disappearance. Holloway disappeared during a trip to Aruba. Her body has never been found. Vandersloot allegedly told Holloway's family he could tell them where her body is in exchange for $250,000. He's being held in Peru for the murder of another woman in 2010.
Jeez.
A real winner, that one.
Yeah.
This never seen anything like this, really. It doesn't happen in the Bay Area all that often.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
A child was taken to a hospital after being bitten by a rattlesnake on a hiking trail on Mount Diablo, in Mount Diablo State Park in Walnut Creek.
Wow.
I have never heard of something like that.
Yeah, not there in Walnut Creek. You don't hear about
No,
it.
not really in the Bay Area much, but here we go. A park ranger telling NBC Bay Area the 7-year-old boy was walking through grass when he felt the bite on his lower leg. His mom carried him to the parking lot where rangers stabilized the boy to keep the venom from spreading throughout his body. He was airlifted to the hospital and he is expected to be okay. One minute you're walking through the grass at Mount Diablo State Park. The next minute you're on an air ambulance headed to the hospital.
Wow.
That's not fake. That's real.
Yeah, that's real. I do have those fake snakes, though, lying around. I've seen people have them on their property. I actually was just at someone's home, and they had 4 of them, and they do make you jump back. They look just like that.
Were they trying to prank you, or are they there to
No,
keep
it's a way to keep...
away?
They're worried about intruders. They're worried about, it's a way to... Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Oh,
But I
that's
guess
kind of
that's
interesting. Yeah. Did you see this fight? This big thing that happened in Southern California. This is an issue at a school board meeting. So the governor is now speaking out against what he calls an organized campaign of hate. Video shared all over social media shows a fight during a Tuesday protest outside of a Southern California school board meeting. Officials were voting to recognize Pride Month. This is Pride Month, the month of June, for the 4th year in a row. Governor Newsom says a wave of division and demonization is sweeping the nation, and he is urging everyone to rise together and affirm that in this state, no matter who you are or what diverse community you're from, you belong. Yes, there was a big to-do out there. The people don't want Pride Month. Some people do want Pride Month, and there you go.
It's tricky. It's a big Armenian community there, and they are... which is just interesting. I didn't realize that there was such a pushback from that community. But it's being cast that way as a sort of that community acting in solidarity. Now, I'm not saying they are acting in solidarity. I'm just saying that it's being cast that way by many in that community. So, sort of not in our community. You're not going to be teaching that we're not going to, that LGBTQ plus tolerance isn't going to exist here type thing. It's bizarre. It's so bizarre. These wedge issues are so bizarre. They affect so few people in a way. You know what I mean? I don't understand why tolerance is such a tough thing to teach. And every bit of intolerance seems informed by the flag waving associated with God or some kind. It's a very it's a troubling relationship that we have with tolerance. I don't understand why the society can't get to a place of tolerance. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and sometimes it feels like a very small group can really, go out and protest and affect what happens for everybody else. And that's pretty frustrating as well.
I also think it's a small group they're protesting against. Yeah. In other words, you're a minority protesting against another minority. LGBT, this is the reason it's so dangerous. LGBTQ plus people are discriminated against, and they are bullied in so many ways, and horrible ways. And it's because they are a bullyable minority. And now you, as a minority, are bullying them some more.
Well, it's really frustrating because I thought once we had same-sex marriage that was, affirmed by the Supreme Court, and it was okay everywhere, and people accepted it, it seemed like to me, that we were on the way past being discriminatory toward gay people or people that are, different somehow. And now we're right back where we started, picking on the same group of people over and over again.
Well,
So,
you certainly thought you had the law on your side. So we'll get
Yeah.
to David Katz and maybe ask him about it as well. But yeah.
let's talk about PG&E quickly. There is a new threat emerging ahead of California's fire season. The state's biggest utility facing a huge maintenance backlog. A report shows PG&E has 170,000 jobs waiting to be done in high-risk areas. Company officials say they're working aggressively to reduce this backlog, but they admit the task of replacing old power poles and lines is pretty daunting. The good news is this year's fire season is predicted to be shorter and less intense as well. And I don't know, Mark, if this is going to make you go to Taco Bell or not, but they are introducing a vegan version of the Crunch Wrap. It'll be the fast food chain's first fully vegan entree on the menu. It'll feature seasoned vegan beef that the company says it's been working on for years, vegan Blanco and nacho cheese. It'll be available only at select Taco Bell locations.
There's
in New
never
York
been
City,
anything like this.
Los
I'm excited.
Angeles, and Orlando, beginning today for a limited time. They've got one in Hollywood. You can go get it. The
I
vegan
say
Crunch
bravo.
Wrap. Yeah.
Bravo.
And
Cruelty-free.
lastly, that's
Taco
right.
Bell cruelty-free.
Ocean Day. It is World Oceans Day today, and California State Parks making a big splash to celebrate it. The agency will be live on Facebook and YouTube today, connecting viewers with 2 expert divers underwater. The virtual session, part of a classroom activity going on this week for students, teachers, and families. The goal, raise awareness for young kids to think about the ocean and teach them that everyone is responsible for taking care of it. I like that lesson. That's pretty good. This
Indeed.
report is sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards. Tenuta Vineyards, located in the Livermore Valley, where you can find the Mark Thompson Why Are You Yelling Red? In addition to the Mark Thompson, hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson Pinot Grigio?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
That's right. And I will say that you can do custom labels there. And this is pretty cool because if you have a family event coming up, maybe a reunion or a big birthday party, a milestone birthday party, something special, and you wanted to have some wine with some special labels, maybe make people's mouths drop open, how did you do that? You can do it at Tenuta Vineyards. Yeah. Bridal showers, anniversaries, all kinds of stuff, retirements, graduations. Send Tenuta a picture. Order a bottle of wine with that picture as the label on the bottle. You can email rich@tenutavineyards.com. And by the way, you can also get 10% off of your entire purchase by calling Rich with the slogan,
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod. 10% at checkout. Love it.
10% off at checkout at Tenuta, Tenuta winery.com or 925-699-4576. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Joe Fish, Sal the Shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
Their envy wonton killing. I don't know what a wonton killing is. I'm gonna have to look that one up.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Very excited that you joined us. I'm very excited. Sorry to keep this guy waiting. Wanted to speak to him so much about what's gone on just in the last 24 hours. He's a former federal prosecutor, and now he works on the defense side of the table. But he breaks things down and has predictions like nobody else. I was waxing poetic about him in the first hour and how lucky we are to be around him and have him as a regular visitor. How about it for David Katz? Hi, David. Thank you for your patience.
Having a hell of a week. Take a look at what arrived in the mail.
Look at that. Look at that. Well
Your
done,
health
sir.
and Kim's.
Oh, that's so great. I'm glad you received it. We're so grateful for your insight. Hey, can I start with the Supreme Court? This just came down. They essentially upheld the Voting Rights Act and turned back the Alabama Republican redistricting. I mention it. You don't have to get too much into the weeds on it, but I mention it, and then I'll get to the Trump stuff, only because Is it something of a surprise? I mean, that it didn't quite fall along partisan lines, this ruling?
It was very much a surprise, and I would say it's very good news because Kavanaugh went with Roberts and made a 5-4 majority. If Kavanaugh is going to keep doing that with Roberts, this may even have an impact on the affirmative action case, Mark, which a lot of people think is going to be gutted and changed a lot. Universities and many other institutions are already making plans because they're expecting affirmative action to be gutted or diminished. It may be that with Kavanaugh's vote, now that might be ironic that Roberts might be the one who makes it 5-4 to go back on affirmative action. But it's quite a significant development, Mark, that Kavanaugh is voting in this way because Shelby v. Holder was the famous case which cut back on the Voting Rights Act. It used to be that you needed pre-clearance from the Justice Department to change the rules in one of these southern states that had a history of Jim Crow, that had a history of denying the franchise, the fair vote to African-American citizens. And everyone is upset, you know, along with Citizens United, along with the gun cases like Heller. They're upset about these 5-4 decisions of the Supreme Court that have had such drastic impact. And one of the litany of them is this Shelby. So the fact that Shelby, which cut back on the Voting Rights Act 5-4, has now had this later case, which does not cut back, but which actually holds firm to the second most important provision in the Voting Rights Act, is very important. Basically, to sum it up, Alabama was going to have about 8 Congress members. It's about 25% black, and yet it only has one minority predominant district and only one district represented by a minority Congress member. This was a redistricting that was going to give it 2 seats, which is much more in conformity with the population. The argument is that, well, they had considered race in making a second minority seat. Well, of course, the act was a remedy, Mark. So you have to consider race. So the dissenters like Alito and Thomas to say, oh my God, you can't consider race. Well, you could consider race as a remedy for what happened in those Jim Crow states that were singled out, you could say, by the Voting Rights Act. But that's where Jim Crow was. That's where the huge problems were. That's where the poll taxes were. That's where the diminution of the rights of black people to vote had been carried out. And so when the Supreme Court cut it back 5-4 several years ago, and there were all the protests over that this Supreme Court, with Roberts and Kavanaugh voting with the 3 moderates to liberals, it's very significant, and it will create a second minority district. So there'll be 2 minority predominant districts in Alabama instead of 1, but that will be in conformity with the population. And to say that it should be done only geographically and not considering race at all is really a farce. It's closing your eyes to the history. The dissenters would have closed their eyes to the history. Kavanaugh and Roberts joined the majority to say you have to consider race as part of the remedy for what happened in those Jim Crow states previously and what the Voting Rights Act intended by Congress.
Fascinating, fascinating. I mean, there are increased attempts across the country. I was going to do the story today. We just don't have time. I'll probably do it next week or sometime soon. Increasing aggressive moves on the part of legislatures nationwide to suppress the vote somehow, to suppress the people's voice. And to give state houses and secretaries of state and governors, this is nationwide, the ability to just decide that the vote doesn't reflect the will of the people. They can literally throw out a vote. That for another time, but I guess this in the same basket of potentially suppressing the people's voice. But you're saying in this case, the people's voice will prevail.
It will prevail, and I think it's an encouraging sign that Kavanaugh voted with Roberts, because, you know, if Kavanaugh, everybody was watching to see what Kavanaugh did in Dobbs, and if he'd have voted with Roberts in Dobbs, they would have saved a lot of Roe v. Wade. There might have been a 16-week period that the federal constitution would be deemed to protect. Kavanaugh didn't go along with that. Remember, Senator Collins from Maine was like, oh my God, he promised me. But, you know, it may be that Kavanaugh is kind of a one-off on Dobbs. That's bad enough. But if he's going to be a moderate, if he's going to be kind of like a Kennedy, that would be something. I think he's the one who clerked for Kennedy, which is the other irony of the situation. So be another Kennedy, Kavanaugh. Try to stay in the middle, decided on the law, not on ideology. And we're all rooting for you.
Now let's get to Donald Trump and this indictment letter, the target letter. Can you explain what that is and what we know about this so far?
Well, I have so much to say on that, and it's been so fascinating. This is sort of the discussion that we had years ago when everybody was saying, it looks like Trump is going to be indicted. And then, of course, all the people who thought Trump was going to be indicted or so commented or so opined at various stages have sort of looked like, well, they were crying wolf. I don't know what it is about Trump, why he's so lucky or whatever he is, so bombastic that he doesn't get indicted. But now it looks like he's going to be indicted. I think it's really quite clear that it may be in Florida, it may be in federal court in D.C., it may be in both places, but he is going to be indicted in the next few weeks. It looks like the next few weeks over this Mar-a-Lago. And just so people understand Mar-a-Lago, there's been so much that's been happening. It's so interesting. But the gist of it is that when he lost the presidency, instead of leaving the documents in the White House or sending them to the National Archives, he took what he wanted to take with him. And he took a lot of stuff that was very highly classified and had classified markings on it. Then he took it from Washington, D.C., down to the Southern District of Florida, in particular to Mar-a-Lago, where he was, and he stored it all over the place. And it seemed like the things that he really liked, he took into his own private office. He didn't engage in the proper security procedures at all. These highly classified documents have loads of rules and regulations about them. He didn't observe them. It became known either because he showed them to people who then mentioned it to somebody, and the feds and the National Archives learned about it, or they looked at the National Archives and said, there are these 5 things that ought to be here. How does it go from 1 to 6? Where are 2 through 4? They're missing. Where are they? The only explanation was that Trump must have taken them. So they got very suspicious. They went to Trump. They said, turn over everything that you have that should go to the National Archives. He delayed them. He obstructed them. Finally, he sent them 15 boxes. When he sent them those 15 boxes, Mark, they had so much stuff that was classified or highly classified. They said, oh my God, what happened here? Even in what he's returning to us, how could he ever have taken stuff like that? So they said to him, do you have any more stuff like this? Because the 15 boxes are just amazing what we're seeing, how much stuff you took that was highly classified. He went around with these lawyers and other aides and he said, okay, there's only 38 things that weren't sent with the 15 boxes. Here are the 38 things. And then when the feds looked at that, they said, this makes no sense at all. We think that we're not getting cooperation. They got authorization for a search. They had to go to a federal magistrate judge who took a hard look at it, authorized the search, that there was probable cause, conducted the search. The FBI went in there. They didn't ballyhoo it. It's Trump who went to the press right away and said, oh my God, I've been searched. Look at what they're doing. If he hadn't made a racket about it, I don't think it would have known. It might have leaked later, but it wouldn't have been the huge ballyhoo that it was last August, you would call. And
he said it was a raid. He said it was an FBI raid. Right.
And just to finish this real quickly, Mark, since then, they want to get to the bottom of what happened. How could this stuff have been taken? How could it have been wrongly retained? And one of the questions is going to be, there's surveillance, which shows who went in and who went out. Now, this is beyond belief, but supposedly, we had a pool leak, we had a flood. Oh my God, and the records are gone. Now, I'm doing this sort of New York mobster impersonation because you think, well, nobody would ever come up with a crazy story like this except Trump this one time. It turns out CNN reported that Trump came up with the same crazy story back in 1998, something like that, when he was being investigated for not having invoices, not having properly paid taxes to New York City or New York State from some hotel that he owned. And guess what his answer was when they could see is either the smoking gun or not the smoking gun? Oh, the smoking gun got drowned in a flood. So now this poor unlucky man has suffered yet another flood at Mar-a-Lago, and it's destroyed the servers. It's destroyed surveillance tapes of who went in and who went out. The suspicion is that there were these dress rehearsals, and he actually had staff. Trump had his staff down there, some maintenance workers, those kind of folks, sort of practice what access they would give the feds, how they would show the feds around, how they would give the impression that they were seeing everything in the storage room and there was nothing else. And we now know from the search that this was all a bunch of lies, whether the lawyers connived in the lies or how it happened. It was a bunch of lies. It was a bunch of disinformation because Trump meant to keep the things that he wanted to keep, not turn them over. And when they did the search, there were over 100 documents found with classified markings still on them. And that's the famous Exhibit A that's everyone's seen from the search warrant, which shows a raid around Trump's room. All of these classified documents with the markings still on them. And we've all seen them on that famous photo of the seizures from Trump's room.
Oddly, David, well, first of all, I'll get to the prediction. So obviously, I guess the indictment is imminent because you've got this target letter. Is that what that says essentially? Hey, your client is going to be indicted?
Yeah, you get a letter like that, unless it's a violent case or a case where they think that the person may imminently flee the country. You get a letter like that in a white-collar case. This is a white-collar case. I've gotten letters like that. I normally do what his lawyers did. Either they got the letter or they were advised a few weeks ago that they were going to get that letter. That's an indication that you can go in and give your side of the story. A lot of times the feds have tried to sort of get your side of the story, but you might have something to add, and it's going to look better later on when you tell the media they didn't even want to hear my side of the story, that the government can say, no, we gave you a chance to come in and tell your side of the story. Now, in 2 of the 3 cases where I presented my side of the story, albeit I didn't have a client like Trump, it was a federal income tax evasion case, but 2 out of the 3 times I managed to persuade the tax division not to indict my client. So I have found that they do have an open mind if you have something really interesting to present. And one thing that was great on Lawrence O'Donnell's show, he had this attorney, this supposedly ex-attorney for Trump, which is a farce. This person, Parlatore, is going around and being Trump's spokesman. No lawyer would go around and hold interviews like that if the client didn't want it, because you have an ongoing duty of loyalty to your client, which includes the fact that you can't just decide that you're going to take radio and TV appearances and chat about your client's case. So he's got Trump's full authorization. He's basically, left the legal team to go be the PR team. But O'Donnell asked Parlatore, okay, well, have the meeting with me. Tell me what we don't know that would make the government not want to indict Trump in the Mar-a-Lago case. And of course, he talked all around the issue. He never really answered the question. About as close as he came is that there's supposed to be like a presidential reading room that was supposedly set up for other presidents. And they had this nearby reading room that they could go to. And that Trump near Mar-a-Lago didn't have a reading room set up by the government. So he kind of took it upon himself. The implication is to have this self-help of taking and keeping all the documents. Now, this is a ridiculous defense to the extent it's a defense, particularly because Trump has all the money in the world and could have flown up to Washington or New York or wherever the repository was and gone through those records to his heart's content. He could have had copies of them. So they just had nothing to add at all, except that, Trump wants to keep with the whataboutism and what about Hillary, which is a totally different case. And of course, Biden and Pence are utterly different cases because they didn't fail to cooperate. They didn't obstruct. They didn't delay and play games.
It's an odd. Tom is saying Tom is the keeper of ding words, albeit is a ding word. All right, I'll ding it. I think repository is a ding word for sure. Congratulations, always David has he has them loaded. He's a learned guy, but he doesn't overwhelm us with them. I wanted to ask you though, even though this indictment is imminent, the breadth of stuff, and this is kind of the way I see it, and just in 30 seconds or less, that we saw this lawless president. Nothing applied to him. No law, no ethical consideration, nothing. His kids couldn't get security clearance. His advisors couldn't get security clearance. He bigfooted it. They were compromised. There was pay to play in all these different ways. So I understand the desire to have him held to account for something, okay? But stay with me. Of the things that are percolating legally, it would seem as though January 6th, the Georgia case, these feel as though they're much bigger deals. And maybe I guess I'm asking you, in terms of their effect on American history. You have a president who is trying to manipulate an election. You have a president who is trying to overthrow the transfer of power and to remain in power. It was an insurrection. Those are bigger deals to me than you had a president who took a bunch of classified documents. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's not bad. I'm just asking you to evaluate the other cases as well.
Well, I think January 6th is the most serious And I think that history will note that Merrick Garland should have moved on that he waited around. He would probably say until he had Casey Hutchinson. She was such a critical witness and had so much to say about Meadows and other insiders that if what they're going to do is sort of work up the chain and get Meadows, and you wonder why Meadows testified unless Meadows has made some kind of deal with them. You would think that Meadows, former chief of staff, including on the day of January 6th, you would think that he would have either taken the fifth or he's cooperating with them, which means he's got some kind of deal. So
that's the rumor, right, David, that he's cooperating? Okay.
That's a rumor, but I think it's pretty strong. The amount of time that he spent, the fact that he went in there, he didn't just spend an hour and take the fifth. I think that this fellow who just went into the Miami grand jury the other day, I think when he says, I testified for an hour and I was honest, I think what he honestly did was take the fifth for an hour. You got to take it question by question, and then he left. Because I think he'd be very ill-advised. This was actually a fascinating thing because they had a draft letter, which the special prosecutor has in the Mar-a-Lago case, which said we're turning over everything. The draft that said we've turned over everything, that never went out. That draft got changed so that the letter that went to the special prosecutor didn't say we've turned over everything. Now, everyone who knew why they weren't turning over everything, because they looked in the room and they saw that there were still things that were classified in Trump's desk, because they knew he was playing this game with moving stuff right before the national security official from Justice came to visit Mar-a-Lago with FBI agents. Why was everything not being turned over after a draft said everything had been turned over? Those are critical witnesses. This fellow just called into the grand jury in Miami seems to know about that. But to go to your point, obviously, January 6th is the most important. I think Trump should have been charged with inciting that riot. They should have gotten the people there that they could get. And I think that, we know that Merrick Garland didn't start for a while because he didn't even assign a special prosecutor to do it until after, Adam Schiff and his committee had done such a fantastic job of unearthing facts that really the Department of Justice has better tools to unearth. They could have threatened people with contempt. They could have indicted lower down people. They had a lot of power that Congress didn't have, and yet Congress had to do that. But I think the second most important one really is Georgia. When you look at it in context, like you're talking about, that could be a federal case too. It doesn't have to be a state case. He was impeding the federal election and trying to get one state to vote the wrong way, send a different slate to count the vote in a way that concocted votes that didn't exist, so that he could steal Georgia, so that he could affect the national count, so that he could assume the national presidency that he'd lost. That's a federal crime too. I agree with you that in the scheme of things, Mar-a-Lago looks like it's the third, but the other two haven't gone anywhere yet. This one looks like it's going to proceed before those two. And if you look at the Espionage Act part of it, if he really did have documents that he used either for his political advantage or worse than that, worse than his economic advantage, for some kind of strategic advantage, some kind of way to play games with Saudi Arabia, to pit them against Iran, to somehow control oil, to get money. If you think about that, that's very serious too, because that's something that happened, and it happened more recently. Whatever you can say about January 6th, and it was awful, it was a failed coup. His efforts that were recorded in Georgia, as strong as that evidence seems to be against him, that was a failed attempt because a Republican Secretary of State stood up to Trump and had the gumption with his lawyer to tape the phone call, which was legal in Georgia. Trump never thought that he'd be recorded saying, hey, find me 11,000 votes that I need to win. Concoct 11,000 votes.
That's right. I forgot that.
I just want to find 11,780.
Yeah, that's all he wants to do is find it. We're all looking for our 11,700. Well, go ahead, Kim, as we wrap up with David.
Yeah, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I wanted to throw this question at you because I read a story that the governor of California is proposing a 28th Amendment to the Constitution. Did you see this? He says it will permanently enshrine 4 broadly supported gun safety principles. So Governor Gavin Newsom says the amendment would raise the federal minimum age to purchase a firearm from 18 to 21, mandate universal background checks, institute a reasonable waiting period for gun purchases, and ban the civilian purchase of assault weapons. But we all know how hard it is to get a constitutional amendment passed, let alone something that would limit gun restrictions. What do you think? Is this something that you think could actually happen, or is it dreaming?
ever since we were on with Pat Thurston, Kim, you love to play Stump the Cats. But you're not stumping the cats because I think it's a constitutional amendment. It is so they couldn't get the Equal Rights Amendment through. Think about that, as popular as that was. And so there's no way that they're going to get a constitutional amendment. But I think we can pass laws in California that will withstand a challenge. This idea that the Second Amendment is so restrictive or so entitling that it will be used by this U.S. Supreme Court to knock down state laws on gun control. I think that Newsom ought to, get the political, momentum behind this. He ought to pass these laws and then let the gun manufacturers, that's who's really behind it, take these cases to the federal courts, and let's see if they win. But I think if they're commonsensical, and especially with the amount of mass shootings and other gun violence that there is, don't bet against the Supreme Court. Although if Kavanaugh keeps going this way, he may not get to meet 2 or 4 new Supreme Court justices. He may be the switch in time that saves this 9, right?
Although, let's not read too much into one decision, David. I don't know. Maybe you never know.
Ta-ta.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't give up. I can't
That's
give
a good
up.
word. Come on, ding me.
What's
If
that?
you give up on Kavanaugh, then you have to go with the idea of 11 or 13. Otherwise, these other ones, Gorsuch, Alito, Thomas, even Barrett, they're such lost causes. They're so doctrinaire, so philosophically, religiously, whatever you want to call it, set.
Yeah, well, and I'd love to expand the court, but even that, I guess, is just not going to happen. I mean, I wish the Democrats would lean in more aggressively. But
What are the porn stars doing, Mark?
that Pat is maybe for the next time, Pat, please. The magic with you, David, is never ending. Thank you for putting things in kind of a perspective. Your prediction as Katsadamas for the timetable on this indictment is what, sir?
Well, a lot of commentators said it would be a week. I'm not so sure about that anymore because there's this issue of whether they ought to proceed in Florida or D.C. I think they ought to proceed in D.C. Trump was obstructing an investigation from D.C. One last thing, if you got a subpoena and you were in Spain and you obstructed justice, you immediately flushed all the documents that they wanted down the toilet, or you burned them in Spain. You haven't committed a crime in Spain. You've committed a crime where you got the subpoena from. If you got it from D.C., you intended to obstruct justice in D.C. If you got it from L.A. federal court, where I used to be a federal prosecutor, you were obstructing our investigation in Los Angeles. And so the fact that some people may need to be indicted in Florida because they only did things in Florida, like maybe some of these workers, Trump ought to be indicted in D.C. If the case really should be transferred for venue, Trump will make that motion. He'll ask the judge in D.C. to send the venue down to Southern Florida. And if he's right on the law and everything else, then the judge in D.C. will send it to Florida. They ought to indict in D.C. And apparently it's taking them a few weeks to figure that out. So Katsadamas, you want my prediction? I think that the indictment will be in D.C. I may be wrong on that. The other commentators seem to think that I am wrong on that. But I think that's still the smartest way to go. I think that's the way they should go. I think it conforms with the law, no doubt about it. There's huge venue flexibility that the federal government has. They get to file where they want to file. So I think in D.C., but not for a few weeks.
All right. Wow. Good stuff. You can find him here on Thursdays. The great one. Thank you, David Katz, everybody. Love it, David. So appreciate it, my friend. Really do. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff.
The Mark Thompson Show. The Mark Thompson Show.
Yes, I'm very unhappy with everything I've heard today on your show.
No, no, no.
You can buy a Movado watch in Sam's.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Dr. Emil Schaffhauser, versammelt.
I prefer the Walmart parking lots. I've come from regular stock.
Receive the royal scepter. Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you all the ways you support us. So appreciate it. Kim, I want to get right to Belinda. Can I do it?
Yeah, go ahead.
On Thursdays, we like to talk about news that relates to where we live, planet Earth.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock. Judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid. No. It's the planet stupid.
Our guide for It's the Planet Stupid is eco-journalist Belinda Waymouth. Belinda, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How are you?
Yes, all of the above. I'm so well, Mark. How are you?
I'm well. I thought it was interesting. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. We mentioned it yesterday as well, all the smoke from the fires in Canada. And the cover of the New York Post is what we showed. And the cover of the New York Post a headline was "Blame Canada." And I thought, well, that's okay. That's where the fires are. But the actual cause of these fires, and we're certainly experienced with fires in California, and I think we're on the cutting edge of a lot of this climate crisis. But the climate crisis is what caused all of this, and I just wondered if you had the same thought. I feel like it's been ignored in every television broadcast I've seen. There is no discussion about the fact that this kind of thing is far more common now than it used to be.
Oh, yeah. And that's maddening. That's absolutely maddening. I mean, in Southern California, Texas, and New Mexico, the heating up planet means that we have an additional 2 months of fire weather in these 3 states than we did compared to what we experienced in 1970. And fire is absolutely a part of North American ecology. It's happens naturally in our forests. We need to get rid of the fuels, the tinder, all that stuff. But to not link what's happening to climate, it's crazy. We're putting all this heat into the atmosphere, hotter temperatures, lower humidity, stronger winds. That makes fire season worse. And the other thing, there's so much heat. Yeah, look at it. I mean, this is, the fire weather days. And look what's happening on to the US, to all these states. It's absolutely crazy. And you can also see a few of them on the East Coast. And what they say on the East Coast is, there are 29 million homes that live in zones that are going to be more prone to fires. That's a lot of people. And what's happened in Canada because of these really high temperatures, the polar jet stream normally circulates. So we've got 2 of them. We've got one in the northern hemisphere, one in the southern. They go from east to west, and they circulate at about 60 degrees north in the northern hemisphere and 60 degrees south in southern hemisphere. And that's the barrier between the cool polar air and then the warmer air, that comes up from the equator. Well, there's so much warm air now that the polar jet stream has been pushed all the way up to the pole, all the way up to 90 degrees north. And to not link this to climate change and to sort of see the fingerprint of it, it's maddening because, one of the things that I've really been thinking about, looking at these photographs, do you remember during COVID, we talked about how, air pollution sort of disappeared in all these cities. And, I showed you those pictures of New Delhi where normally, you can see sort of, 100 feet in front of you if you're really lucky, If the tree is there, you probably think you can see it, but you can't actually because the air is so terrible. And during COVID, when everyone got out of their cars and off their motorbikes, suddenly the skies above Delhi cleared. The thing about both of this is all combustion. Trees are full of carbon. So that's, carbon that's going into the atmosphere, just as it is when we're driving around in our cars and it's fossil fuels. And what people on the East Coast are experiencing is what billions of people in Asian cities experience every single day.
And I'm seeing this in the chat, sort of like, this is a...
that photo.
Yeah, that's wild, a Yankee Stadium. Large fires never happened before climate change, Mark. And I do believe in global warming. Calling it climate change is weak. I don't know what you...
No. Look, here's the thing. Of course, we had fires before. I just said, they're a natural part of the North American ecology. Yes, we've always had fires, but not to the extent. Now, look, there was a thing I just was reading about the province of Quebec. By June 6th, so that was Tuesday, there were 150 wildfires burning in Quebec. Now, that province usually, by June 6th, will see about 800 hectares of land destroyed by fire. This year, by June 6th, it was a whopping 474,000 hectares. So, that's, the data is right there. And
there it is on the screen for you to see.
Yeah. I mean, you just, you can't deny it. And, obviously we've done this with fossil fuels for a long time. There was that extreme, what do they call it? The Great Smog of 1952 in London, which lasted for 5 days, and it's now estimated killed 12,000 people prematurely. Now, that happened because fog rolled in off the Thames and they got this weather inversion. So all the smog it was really cold and everyone was burning their coal-fired, fires in their homes. All the factories were still, busy. People were walking around in this pea soup of smog. And cut to it, and this weather inversion happened. So the fog held that smog down, all that sulfuric acid from burning coal. And 12,000 people died. I mean, look, we've got 9 million people dying every year from fossil fuel combustion pollution. And, back in 2015, I mean, it's, I'm just going to go through all the numbers so our listeners can hear it and get this as a big deal. So what they're saying is that 1 in 5 deaths happen because of pollution. In the US and Europe, people are lucky. It's about 1 in 10. In continents like Africa, where there's way less particulate pollution, coming from the burning of fossil fuels, it's way lower. And what you're seeing when you saw that picture of Yankee Stadium, that's particulate pollution in the air. Now, it's called PM 2.5 micrometers. It's 30 times thinner than a strand of hair, and it's highly inhalable. So what happens is you're walking around, and I was horrified to see all those people in the stadium and to see those players out on the field, because you breathe in that air and it gets into your lungs, it gets into your bloodstream, and it gives you asthma, it causes heart attacks, it causes strokes. It's super dangerous. And in Syracuse, New York, their particulate matter, their air quality index was at 402. That's 8 times what's considered good. You want your air quality index to be at 50 or under. Yeah, that was Syracuse yesterday. You don't want to be breathing that stuff in. And you can sort of see when you look at it. And then also, you get a feeling when you breathe it in. People on the East Coast are talking about, I'm coughing up phlegm. It feels acrid in my, nose and my throat.
The other thing that I know I've read, and we've reported on it here, is that this particulate matter, and it's so small, makes it into deep parts of the lungs. And so lung tissue is affected in ways that you've suggested, emphysema, all these other things, but also even cancers. These toxins now get into the body on such a deep level. Of course, we're bathing in this toxic brew, but when you can see the toxic brew, look at that. That's Midtown Manhattan yesterday evening versus today, so you can see it clear.
Yeah.
Wow.
You don't want to be breathing in particulate pollution. You just don't. In 2015, this research came out about the what coal-fired power plants were doing in China. And what they estimated was it was 1.6 million people dying annually in China, which equates to 4,000 people per day dying prematurely or from particulate matter pollution every day. And I can, Mark, whenever I go to cite that research, I always have to go back and look, because I always think, it must be 4,000 a week. It can't be, and then I'm like, no, it was 4,000 a day. That should, we should all, like I said, what's happening on the East Coast should make people pay attention, because that's what people in these really polluted Asian cities are living in every single day. I mean, Detroit and New York and Toronto just got bumped up, into the 12 most polluted major cities, yesterday and the day before. But that's temporary, that they'll pop out of that once the, the wind comes and takes all that smoke away.
Well, we've even seen it a bit today, and Tony was showing us just the difference in that particulate matter and how it's cleared. The N95 masks. I mean, I hate to get to sort of the practical. I mean, you've given us sort of the overarching issue, but you can see the smoke forecast, how it's forecast to clear. Tony's showing it to you now.
Yeah.
But my question is, the N95 masks are effective in the fight against COVID and I guess just transmissibility of viruses, this sort of thing. They're also effective to a degree in reducing the effects of this smoke and the harmful effects of the smoke in these cases with the wildfires here in California and back east.
Yeah, I would totally be wearing one. I'd be doing anything I could to protect my lungs. I don't want all that particulate matter, like you said, lodging in there, compromising my health. And yes, I think any kind of barrier that you can use, and the N95 everyone likes because, they're tight. They've got the wire above, on the bridge of your nose, so you can make them really fit snugly, which is, the thing that you want to do. I mean, yesterday, the mayor of New York is telling everyone, stay inside, stay inside. And I remember when we were having fires here in Southern California and, having to be inside, having air purifiers on, looking out and seeing that horrible sort of orange, gray, air and the sun is sort of a weird kind of, you could see the sun was behind it, but very, hazy. And you just like, I'm not going out there with my kid. I'm going to stay inside. But what about if you live in a place where you don't have security?
Where it's that way every day.
Yes,
if you live in a place where it's that way every day, there isn't, well, I'm going to wait for a couple of days and it'll clear.
Yeah.
And increasingly the planet is engulfed by this. This is interesting. I know, and we always get these, but Leon says, yet we're afraid of nuclear, which has killed under 200 people ever. We are being left behind on nuclear build-outs around the world and need to step it up. Renewables will never be base load power. Now, we talk about this from time to time. I'm just giving you some stuff out of the chat.
Yeah.
But I would, just because you mentioned this, Leon, and we talk about this from time to time, and I'm not really trying to pull Belinda into a discussion of nuclear and viability and versus she's done it before. I would encourage you to go back and find those videos, but we'll do it again. But Belinda, I'm not trying to pull you into some kind of major discussion about nuclear versus renewables. I think it's interesting, though, that you talk about nuclear and how safe it is, and that it's only killed 200 people ever. The threat to the nuclear plant in Ukraine now is so real that the world is looking for ways that they might intervene in the same way that it suggested that Russia sabotaged that dam and has blown that dam open in Ukraine. Yeah. And because the kinds of explosives needed and the placement of those explosives seem that as though they would have to be strategically placed in a way that you'd really need access to the dam. It's suggested that they may do the same thing with that nuclear plant. And I mean, again, you may view this as ridiculous. Why would they ever do that? It would irradiate an entire area. So these questions on nukes, I think, are far more complicated than, well, how many people have died from nukes? And the last thing I'll say is, and Fukushima, you should look at it, Google it, and see what's happening there. That is a disaster. And the only treatment for it now, and it's an inadequate treatment, is to pour that radioactive water into the ocean. And that's what's happening. So, again, happy to talk about nukes, but don't tell me how safe it is, because recent history and more distant history would suggest otherwise. Now, I just wanted to respond to that one comment, Belinda. Sorry.
Yeah. We've talked about the nuclear thing before, and really, it's about scalability, and Bill McKibben said a great thing about, the sun, which is the, external combustion. We've got that sun up there, all that energy coming from it. I mean, all of life on Earth is possible because of the sun and, plants and photosynthesis and, blah, 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 the whole thing. But the fact that we're now harnessing that incredible amount of energy and that, solar is ramping up so fast and wind turbines. I mean, Denmark is making so much offshore wind and onshore wind right now. They're going to start sending their electricity to the UK. Here, we're going to sell it to you. We're making more than we can use. So, and also that storage and, being able to recycle, solar panels, to recycle EV batteries. I was telling, you guys a couple of weeks ago, about one of the co-founders of Tesla, who's now got a plant in Reno, to recycle the batteries from electric vehicles, because people always talk about that. How can we get the lithium and all the, the precious rare earth metals out of them? And that's all happening. And that's going to happen faster than all these nuclear fusion plants that people are spending, so much money on, and they always go over budget and never meet their deadlines.
The ramp up period is immense, and I'm seeing it. Well, we're in a crisis. We can't take that long. Let's get it online. Well, there's nothing better. I can't imagine anything better than ramping up a nuclear plant super quickly before you can get right past all the regulatory stuff. Let's just get it going fast. I don't know. I mean, skip over a bunch of stuff. I mean, this is how immense tragedies happen. It has to be an interdisciplinary world that treats this problem, but I think you can't ignore certain basic facts. And similarly with batteries and some of the issues, environmental issues with batteries, there are problems there as well. So when we talk about fossil fuels and we talk about the carbon footprint and this particulate matter, it's all in a larger conversation. But I think we skip over facts when convenient oftentimes when talking about this stuff. And it happens on both sides. I think it can happen on the alternative energy side as well. There are challenges to alternative energy and getting it on the grid. And as you say, storing the energy so that, when you have a bunch of non-sunny days or seasonal days that don't favor alternative energies, you still have energy stored, energy distribution. These are all big challenges and they have to be addressed quickly. But I don't think the answer is just throw the switch on nukes. So
I you know that I kind of lean the same way, and we did several. I mean, I think we did 3 shows just talking about nuclear. The pros, the cons, all of those things. I mean, just to get off the fires and renewable energy and climate change. I mean, or no, stay on climate change. But one of the biggest things to help the planet is how we eat. If we just ate, less animal products, if we weren't so wasteful with our food, I mean, the amount of food that we're throwing away, if we went to the supermarket and went, give me the ugly vegetables, I'll take the weird looking carrot and the potato, because the way we're set up as consumers, we want these perfectly shaped vegetables and everything, shiny and deluxe looking, but we need to eat everything. We need to not be wasteful with our food. I mean, this is, the dropping our food waste and, being smarter about what we eat. Those are in the, the top 6 ways that we're going to lower our emissions. So it's going to require everything. And like I said, I just feel like what's happening on the East Coast is like ding dong. This is what people in Asia are living with every single day from the burning of fossil fuels. And we don't, if we've got Canada on fire to this degree, by June 8th, things are not going right, and we need to be turning the ocean liner around. And that's my
I think that's really an apt metaphor, turning the ocean liner around. There's a lot to handle and a lot to turn and a lot to change, and nothing should be ruled out. Not ruling out nuke. I'm just suggesting, as I hear you speak about all these specifics, that it has to be interdisciplinary. It has to include all of these different options. And I think these can be, to use the expression, teachable moments. I mean, this stuff gets when we say, well, it's Canada's. Yeah, I get it. It's Canada, but they're suffering from these fires on a level they haven't seen in the post-industrial era. So you have to acknowledge that stuff's going sideways, man. We got to figure something out. So anyway, Belinda, I thank you, for bringing information here and specifics every week. And also thank you for handling these little, I don't know, the chat stuff that's thrown into our conversation every time, because I know that kind of changes our course a little bit. But you're really great to indulge us that way. So thank you.
Oh, I think it's really important, because I think the conversation around the stuff is really vital, and to hear all points of view. You know, I mean, you just, yeah, it's all hands on deck, and it's all technologies and, you know, the low hanging fruit. You know, if you just eat meat, you know, 1, 2, 3, you know, less days a week, you're going to be helping out.
Yeah, get the low-hanging fruit, not the low-hanging meat, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Maybe just every day, anyway. You can find her on social media. Belinda Waymouth is Waymouth. Thank you, Belinda.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Love it.
More. Is the planet stupid?
No. It's the planet stupid.
Next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been an eventful day. We had a near miss with Jefferson Graham. He almost didn't make it. Tony is here. Tony, I want to thank you for rallying so many visuals in the last hour. You really, I got to say, right?
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, he's
Gotta
really
earn my keep somehow, right?
I thought so. He stepped up in the second hour. Great discussion, says Grigio Bear. Thank you, Ricky. Need a little more great discussion. Love it. I need a little more of that. I get all of this stuff. Tomorrow I'll show. I can't tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm not going to be here. Kim will be here tomorrow. You're spared then all my, emails about the levels and this. We are crowdfunded. I have not mentioned it at all today. So that was, when you don't mention it, oftentimes the audience forgets. And we're kind of like, public television or public radio. So we didn't mention it. Some days we mention it a lot. Some days we don't. But if you want to support us, you visit themarkthompsonshow.com. Have to put on themarkthompsonshow.com into the URL, and you click Patreon or PayPal, and you can contribute. So many of you have been generous in... Oh, look at that for the tip jar, Walter. Thank you, Walter. Big shout out, by the way.
Big shout out.
Walter's in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So many of you have been generous in existing Patreon supporters actually stepping up their support further, which is really, really cool also. So appreciate that as well. So anyway, themarkthompsonshow.com. Click Patreon or PayPal and you can contribute. Help keep the show on the air. Tomorrow, you've got the lovely Kim filling in for me. That's right. Finally, you'll get what you want.
We're going to talk about alligators. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's right. It's Friday Fabulous Florida tomorrow. Right. Avila and Shore tomorrow on politics. Big change at CNN. They fired the guy who was running the place and trying to make it more middle of the road. What will happen with CNN? It's important because that media narrative, I think, dictates a lot of stuff. And they built up Donald Trump, I think, in part. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. Kim will have those guys here, Shore and Avila. Michael Snyder on movies. You got a lot to do, Kim. I'm somewhat envious.
I think I can make it happen.
Oh, I know you can make it happen.
I'm no Mark Thompson, but I think I can carry it on a Friday.
There's a virtue in not being Mark Thompson.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
And Shadow joins us. Isn't that going to run in the next week or so?
Yes.
Until tomorrow, bye-bye.